Mercedes just dominated the first two races of the 2026 season. Australia, China, 2-1-2 finishes. Complete control. But now, everything is starting to change. Because the FIA has just taken things further. Not just watching. Investigating. Expanding their focus on the one area every team is questioning. The engine. And what happens when it's pushed to the limit. Here's why this is massive. Rival teams believe Mercedes may have found something hidden. A gray area inside the regulations. That only shows its true advantage under real race conditions. Heat, pressure, full load. Exactly where performance matters most. And now, just days before the Japanese Grand Prix, the FIA is closing in. Which means one thing. Every lap in Suzuka becomes an inspection. Because if Mercedes' advantage comes from that hidden space, it could disappear overnight. But if it doesn't, then what Mercedes has built is something no rule change can stop. Subscribe now, because what's about to happen in Japan could decide the entire season. Right after Australia, the first reactions were cautious. Because dominance at the start of a new regulation era is not unusual. One team gets it right earlier. The others catch up. That's how Formula One works. But this didn't feel like that. Because Mercedes didn't just win. They controlled everything. Qualifying pace, race pace, energy deployment. Every phase of the weekend looked effortless. And the gap? Over 8/10 in qualifying. That's not a small advantage. That's a statement. At that point, you could still explain it. Better preparation. Better understanding. A head start. But then China happened. And that explanation started to fall apart. Because the track was completely different. Long straights. Heavy braking zones. More opportunities to recover energy. In theory, a chance for Ferrari to fight back. But they didn't. Mercedes was still ahead. Still in control. Still dictating the pace of the race. And more importantly, the same pattern appeared again. Ferrari was strong in the corners. Competitive in technical sections. Sometimes even matching Mercedes. But the moment they hit the straight, everything changed. Not gradually. Instantly. And that's what made it impossible to ignore. Because in this new era, energy is limited. You cannot deploy everything for the entire straight. At some point, every car runs out. Every car starts to lose speed. But Mercedes didn't. They kept accelerating. Even at the end of the straight. Exactly where others started to fade. And that's where the tension begins. Because when one team behaves differently under the same limits, there is always a reason. And that's when engineers from rival teams started asking questions. Not about aerodynamics. Not about setup. About something deeper. Something hidden. Inside the power unit. Because the suspicion wasn't about peak power. It was about consistency. How Mercedes could sustain performance. Longer than anyone else. Lap after lap. Straight after straight. And that's not something you ignore. That's something you investigate. Which is exactly what started happening behind the scenes. Because once teams realized that this advantage might exist in an area the rules didn't fully cover, they didn't stay quiet. They pushed. They demanded answers. And that pressure is what forced the FIA to go further. The moment the FIA stepped in, the entire situation changed. Because this was no longer just paddock speculation. No longer just teams complaining behind closed doors. This became official. And when something becomes official in Formula One, it means there's already pressure behind it. But here's the key detail. The FIA didn't accuse Mercedes of breaking the rules. They didn't say anything was illegal. Instead, they admitted something far more important. The rules themselves weren't complete. Because the regulation around engine performance, specifically the compression ratio, was only being measured in controlled conditions. Cold, static, perfectly stable. But a Formula One engine never operates like that. Not during a race. Not under pressure. Not at full temperature. And that's where everything starts to connect. Because according to what the FIA publicly acknowledged, there were ways for engines to behave differently. When they're running hot. When everything expands. When pressures increase. When the system is under real load. And that's the gap. That's the gray area. Because if an engine passes every test in the garage, but delivers something extra on track, then you're not breaking the rules. You're exploiting what they didn't define. And that's exactly why rival teams reacted so aggressively. Because this isn't something you can easily protest. You can't point to a clear illegal part, but you can see the effect. On every straight. On every lap. On every race. And that's why Ferrari, Honda, Audi, all pushed together. Because if this wasn't addressed early, Mercedes could lock in an advantage that no one could recover from. And the FIA responded. Not with penalties. With change. They updated how compression would be measured. Not just in cold conditions anymore, but also in hot, real operating conditions. And that single move tells you everything. Because rule changes like this don't happen without a reason. They happen because something already forced them. But here's where the tension really builds. That change is not fully in effect yet. Not for Suzuka. Which means Mercedes arrives in Japan under the same rules that allowed their dominance, but under a completely different level of scrutiny. Every lap observed. Every straight analyzed. Every detail questioned. And inside the team, that creates pressure. Because dominance brings confidence. But investigation brings uncertainty. Every performance gain now has a question attached to it. Every advantage is being watched. And that's a completely different environment to operate in. Because for the first time this season, Mercedes isn't just racing against Ferrari. They're racing against doubt. And Suzuka is where that pressure finally shows. And this is where Suzuka changes everything. Because this track doesn't just test speed. It tests truth. High-speed corners. Continuous load. No long breaks. No easy sections. Every part of the lap demands precision. And more importantly, total confidence in the car. Which is exactly what Mercedes has had so far. Control. Confidence. Clarity. But now, that clarity is gone. Because when you arrive at a race weekend under investigation, everything feels different. Every decision carries weight. Every performance gain is questioned. And that changes how a team operates. Because before Suzuka, Mercedes could focus on one thing: execution. Now, they have to think about something else. Perception. How they look. How they perform. What others are seeing. And that creates pressure. Real pressure. Not from the stopwatch. From the environment. Because every rival team is watching. Every engineer is analyzing. Every straight is being studied. Looking for one thing. A change. Any change. A loss of performance. A drop in speed. A moment where Mercedes looks human. And if that happens, even once, everything shifts. Because doubt spreads fast in Formula One. But here's where the situation becomes even more intense. Because Suzuka is not forgiving. If your system is not perfect, it exposes you. If your energy deployment is not precise, you lose time instantly. If your balance is not stable, you lose confidence. And if your advantage depends on something sensitive, something affected by temperature, by load, by sustained pressure, then Suzuka will push it to the limit. Which means one thing: if there is any weakness, it will appear here. But here's the other side of the story. What if it doesn't? What if Mercedes arrives in Suzuka, under full scrutiny, with everyone watching, and they're still dominant? Still controlling the race. Still pulling away on the straights. Still managing energy better than anyone else. Because if that happens, then the conclusion becomes unavoidable. This isn't about a gray area. This isn't about a regulation gap. This is about understanding. A level of understanding no one else has reached. And that's far more dangerous. Because you can close a loophole. You can change a rule. But you can't instantly replicate knowledge. And if Mercedes truly has that advantage, then what we're seeing right now is not temporary. It's the beginning of control. Which is why Suzuka matters more than any race so far. Because this is the moment everything becomes clear. Either the pressure affects them, and the fight begins. Or it doesn't, and the dominance becomes real. And if that second scenario happens, then this investigation didn't create tension. It revealed something much bigger. That Mercedes isn't just ahead. They're operating on a level the rest of the grid hasn't even reached yet. And this is where everything reaches its breaking point. Because tension inside Mercedes doesn't come from losing. It comes from what could happen next. Because for the first time this season, there is uncertainty. Not about performance. About what that performance means. Because when a team dominates this early, they usually build confidence, momentum, clarity in development. But this situation is different. Because every gain they make now is being questioned. Every advantage is being analyzed. And that creates something far more dangerous than pressure from rivals. Internal tension. Because inside the team, there are now two realities. One side believes everything is under control. That the car is simply better. That the advantage comes from superior understanding. From integration. From execution. Exactly what the data suggests. But the other side knows what's happening outside. The scrutiny. The investigation. The political pressure building around them. And that changes how you operate. Because now, Every decision has consequences beyond performance. Every update, every setup change, every adjustment could be interpreted in a completely different way. And that's where tension grows. Because Formula One is not just engineering. It's perception. It's politics. It's timing. And right now, Mercedes is at the center of all three. But here's where it becomes even more critical. Because development doesn't stop, even under investigation. They still have to bring updates. They still have to improve. They still have to stay ahead. But now, they have to do it carefully. Because pushing too hard could raise more questions. But holding back could reduce their advantage. And that balance is almost impossible to manage. Especially heading into a race like Suzuka, where performance differences are exposed instantly. Where every tenth matters. Where every detail shows. And that leads to one final, unavoidable moment. The race itself. Because when the lights go out in Japan, everything disappears. The politics. The investigation. The pressure. For a few seconds, it's just performance. But that's exactly where the truth comes out. Because if Mercedes is still dominant, still controlling the race, still pulling away in the same places, then all the tension, all the questions, all the scrutiny, leads to one conclusion. They were never in danger. They were simply ahead. But if something changes, if the gap closes, if the straights look different, if the advantage is reduced, even slightly, then everything shifts. Because that means the pressure worked, that the investigation mattered, that the dominance was not as untouchable as it seemed. And that's the moment that defines everything. Because Formula One doesn't wait. If Mercedes shows weakness, even once, the entire grid will react instantly. Ferrari, Red Bull, everyone, and the fight begins. But if they don't, if they hold that advantage under full scrutiny, under maximum pressure, at one of the most demanding tracks in the world, then the answer is clear. This isn't just a fast car. This is a complete system, a level of understanding, a foundation. And if that's true, then what we're watching right now is not tension, it's transformation. The moment a dominant era begins. And Suzuka is where we find out if that era has already started.